In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to do a magnified border that gives you a bit of a blurred edge around your image, and it's pretty cool. So to get going, we need to make a copy of the original background layer twice. And to do this, we're going to hold down our Control or Command key and press the letter J twice, and that gives us two copies. Now we need to rename these layers. The quickest way to do that is just to double click on the layer text, like so. The first one you're going to call Blur, because we're going to blur that layer later on, and the second one we're going to call Image, and this is going to be our final image. So we've got those two layers. We need to add a third layer on top of the original background layer, and it's going to be a blank layer that we're going to add an edge to later on. So you click on the Create New Layer icon at the bottom of the palette here, and again double click on layer 1, and we're just going to call that one Edge. Once we've got our three layers on top of our background, we need to actually fill the original background detail. If I just switch off the visibility, click on the background, we need to fill this layer with white. Easiest way to do that is to make sure your black and your white color picker, foreground and background, are reset, and do Control or Command backspace, and that's that done. We'll then switch on the visibility of the layers above. We're then going to jump to the image layer, and we're going to resize this layer. Now the quickest way again of resizing an image layer is to do Control or Command T. That gets us our bounding box up, and I'm going to maintain the aspect ratio in the options bar by clicking this icon here, and from there I'm going to reduce the width and automatically the height to 90%, bringing in 10% from the edge. Click the little tick or double click inside the bounding box, it doesn't matter, and then we have our sharp image that we're not going to blur inside. And you can see the magnification effect happening on the layer below. Now, to exaggerate this and blur it a little, we're going to click on the blur layer below, and you can see if I switch it off, there's the white edge below that, and there's the larger image, which you can see the edge. And we're going to blur this. Now, I'm just going to use a simple filter, blur, Gaussian blur, but feel free to experiment with the box blur or the lens blur, particularly the box blur. That's quite new and good fun. But I'm going to stick with Gaussian blur, that way other version users of Photoshop 7, CS, things like that, or even back to 6 can still do this technique. So I'm going to click Gaussian blur just now, and I'm going to blur it to a ratio of 40 pixels, and then click OK. And you'll see now there's the original bridal dress nice and sharp in this layer, and in this layer here it's all blurred out. We're then going to do Select All, so do Control or Command A with your keyboard again, nice shortcut, and we're going to create an adjustment layer of hue and saturation, like so. You can then use the lightness slider either to darken off or lighten up the blurred edge, and I'm just going to lighten it roughly 25 pixels and then click OK. You can go in and adjust this further later on, and remember this hue and saturation adjustment layer sits one above the blur, not above the image as well, but between the two image layers, the blur and the image. Once we've done that, we're going to click on the image layer. Now we want to find the edge of the image layer, and once again the quickest way of doing that is to hold your Control or Command key down and click on the little thumbnail for the image layer, and this will find a selection around the edge, like so. You then want to click on the edge layer because we're going to apply the stroked edge to this blank layer above so that it isn't linked to the image layer, and we can adjust it later on. To do that, we're going to go to Edit and Stroke. And the good thing about resetting our color picker earlier on is that we want a black edge, and I'm going to make it 10 pixels. Once again, once you practice this, feel free to adjust this width to something that suits your style. Inside, normal and 100% opacity. And once we've done this command, we're going to repeat it just directly after as well, so it'll be the same settings. Click OK, and then do Select All, or Control A or Command A, and this time we're going to apply the edge to the outer part of the image as well. So once again, Edit, Stroke, and now just click OK, and then you can do Control or Command D to get rid of the selection. And you can now see we have two black edges which we can switch the visibility on and off, our image layer inside that, our hue and saturation layer, which is making the blurred layer lighter, giving definition between the two layers, the blur layer and the original background. And on the original background, to finish off the image, we're going to increase the canvas size. Now, this image here is actually an A3 plus image, so if you've got an A3 plus printer, you can print to this size, but I'm actually going to increase the canvas by doing image canvas size, and I'm going to increase it to 24 by 16, so this actually goes beyond the size of my A3 inkjet printer, and I'm going to have to send this one to a lab to get printed. So I'm going to increase the width to 24 inches and the height to 16. Again, you increase the size of your canvas in relation to the original size of your image. So for example, if you have a 10 inch by 8 inch image, you maybe want to take it 2 inches wider and go to a 12 by 10 inch image. You get the idea anyway. This is all we've got to do here. We're just going to make sure the canvas colour is white, and that's already set for us because the original background colour here is set to white. Click OK. And that then expands the canvas, and if I double click my little hand icon in the tools bar, you can then see we've got our beautiful border with our edge around it. Now you can then play with this. This is the basic image as it stands. You can put type down the bottom. You can also, for example, reverse the colours, repeat the command Control or Command backspace and fill it with black. You can then go to the edge layer, for example, and change the blending mode to maybe soft light, and you'll see that affects the edge, giving a different definition. And you also have the ability to change the hue and saturation adjustment layer. Now you'll notice there's actually a black edge around here, and if you look back on the tutorial, rewind and actually play again, you'll remember before we applied this hue and saturation adjustment layer, we did a select all command, and this meant that we weren't going to affect the larger canvas size because it's being masked off effectively when it came to expanding the canvas. So when you actually adjust this layer by double clicking on the icon, it means you can adjust the hue like so. We'll just make it more bluey. You can adjust the saturation and also maybe darken it off like so, but you're not affecting anything in the black or the white background, which you would do if you didn't select all here. So we can click OK, and you can see we can change the look many different times. And if you're into using the layer comps here, you can then save the different compositions and actually give yourself a different look for one image several times just by adjusting, and we'll just tuck that down there, just by adjusting the edge, the hue and saturation and the background. One final thing to say about the edge is that we obviously filled it with black originally. If you lock the transparency of the edge and once again reverse your colours so white's the background, you can again use the Control backspace command, and that will then fill the edge and only the edge, none of the transparent areas around the edge, with white, giving you again a different look for the image. And there we have a way of creating a magnified border, a nice canvas size and an interesting edge.